Glory to Jesus Christ. It's good to be back with all of you. As you may know, may not, if you haven't been here for a couple weeks, or if you're a visitor, I was away on pilgrimage for the last 2 weeks. I started off in Poland, and then I moved down into the Czech Republic, and then Austria, and then over to Hungary. So it was a fantastic 4-week pilgrimage, and I thought maybe I'd talk about it. And I think the subject will be blessed are the merciful, for they shall retain mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall retain mercy. It was an interesting experience, and as you all know, there's one subject that Father says I'm not going to talk about with you guys, and what is that? Politics. I don't do politics. And that's because I don't think I need to. I think I can teach you the moral principles that are necessary for you to make correct decisions when it comes to politics. I think the moral principles are what you need. Okay? So I stay away from that. And if I want to argue with you guys, I want to argue about the things that matter most to me, and that's the faith. Okay. With that said, it's pretty fair for me to say Hitler sucks, right? Like, you guys are okay with me going back to politics that far? And I'm not a big fan of Hitler and Stalin. Is that okay? So, no, but if you want to push me on that, fine, you can argue with me on that. I'll do that. I got to go to Auschwitz. I wasn't super interested in going to Auschwitz. I wanted to go on a spiritual pilgrimage. Auschwitz was the most important thing that I experienced in Central Europe. It was horrendous. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen. I've never seen human evil at that level. Never seen it. You're not allowed to take videos in certain areas of Auschwitz. If you don't know, Auschwitz is the first and the biggest and the clearest example of a Nazi death camp. The Nazis very intentionally were hiding what they were doing. So they didn't bury bodies, they incinerated bodies. And they didn't get rid of things, they burnt them. And so, for example, I saw a room that was, let's say, from this side of the carpet over about 15 foot up. It was just women's hair. That's all it was women's hair. Because they would take their hair, the Nazis would take them and use them for creating things like shirts and underwear and other such things. They used everything, and they treated people like animals. I saw a room full of nothing but hundreds of, I think it was like 100,000 is the estimate of shoes, and half of them were children's shoes that were taken. It was a horrendous thing to see. What was going on there. And so for the first time ever, I got interested, and I started studying more about World War I and World War II, and now I'm fascinated, and now all of a sudden I'll start knowing a bunch of stuff on that, because I'll get really into it, because I get hyper focused on things at times. So anyways, what stuck out to me was how bad it was in Central Europe, and what Central Europeaners and Eastern Europeaners and well, yeah, of course, certainly Britain went through in World War II. It was just horrendous how much evil we can create as humans. And what really stuck out to me was that most of this transpired. I'm not talking about Japan and China right now. Just what took place in Europe and in America That is even the ignoring of what was going on in America. We were ignoring a lot of what was going on. That was our policy. For the most part of it, was that these came from Christian nations. It came from, Germany was a Protestant nation. They had, for the most part, become Protestant through the Reformation. The USSR was primarily Orthodox, right? Hungary was primarily Roman Catholic when they took sides with the Soviets, and the Polish were, I think, the most persecuted as far as I can tell. They were all Roman Catholics pretty much, but there were certainly a lot of Polish who when they would use Polish guards, and that was a way of demoralizing the people and giving them hopelessness. They would use their own people against them. It would be like if all of us were put in a concentration camp and they picked a few of us to be the guards over each other. It would be completely demoralizing. It was just a horrendous circumstance. And so I was able to, now let me backtrack a little bit here. I went on this pilgrimage accidentally. I didn't want to go on this pilgrimage. And the reason why I didn't want to go on this pilgrimage, so what happened was I saw that it was a pilgrimage to Central Europe, and Central Europe is like right around the countries, Slovakia, Ukraine, that our church is directly related to. And I thought, well, that would be interesting. It would give me some perspective, and it's a free trip, so why not? But then I found out that it was a trip about John Paul II, Maximilian Kolbe, and Faustina. And Maximilian Kolbe I've always been good with, but I've never been a big fan of John Paul II or Faustina. Just full transparency. That's kind of my policy. Full transparency. I've always had difficulty with some of their thinking, some of their actions, some of their theology. But I was able to be given not that I dismiss everything, but I was able to be given a little bit of a reset in my thinking because of the cultural experience that I had. Faustinia's message was the message of mercy. The message of mercy. And this happened right before World War I, if you don't know. It happened right before World War I. Or World War II, I'm sorry. Happened right before World War II that she started putting out this message of mercy. And John Paul II was most influential for overcoming the Soviet Union, for overcoming communism in Central Europe. And Maximilian Kolbe, if you don't know, there was a man who was, the Nazis would take a group of persons, and they would have one man who would kind of look around the room and go, I'll let you live today, you live today, you're going to die today. They wanted the people to live in absolute horror all the time, okay? And so picked a man, said, you're going to be this guy picks a man, you're going to be the one who dies today. And he begins to beg for his life. He says, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have people to take care of, I don't want to die. And Maximilian Kolbe, he steps forward and says, I'll take his place. I'll take his place. And this is the first time, as far as we know, that someone in these concentration camps had that level of heroic virtue. They knew the torture that was going to happen if they decided to do that. Okay, I saw some of the prison cells, and they could be boxes, 2 foot by 2 foot, completely dark. You have to crawl into them, and you're in a cupboard. Okay, they knew the torture that was awaiting them, and they would be starved to death, and then eventually beaten along the way, and then perhaps giving a quick injection with a needle, which was the beginning phases of how they did it. They didn't start using gas, by the way, pest control, until they had figured out that it's a more effective, easy, and cheaper method to eradicate large numbers of humans. So Maximilian Kolbe knew that was his outcome, and he chose it for the sake of this other man. And of course, Faustini was teaching about the importance of mercy right before all of this happened. And then JP2 was the one who said that her message needed to be heard, especially today, and became an apostle of mercy. And so these three witnesses whom I visited their houses, I visited their monasteries, I visited their churches. We're all at this time apostles for mercy. Now you can textualize that and say, well, what in the world would Christians need to hear a message of merciful? Christians are merciful. That's how we are, right? Well, no. I mean, these were all Christian nations that I'm bringing up. These were all Christian nations who when faced with a difficulty, when faced with apparent enemies at their doorsteps, chose not to be merciful and found excuses to, in fact, harm others, to not be advocates of mercy, but advocates of death and destruction and oppression. That happened with Christians. That was on us. Now, there were philosophies that were undergirding those demonic philosophies of Marxism and Nazism that were undergirding and leading this direction, but nevertheless, I mean, it was Christians who were falling for it and then becoming de-Christianized. Don't think that can't happen to us. How hardened have our hearts become towards things like abortion, right? That can happen to us. We can also allow the extermination of people around us and the harm and pain towards people around us by being influenced by the demons, by allowing our anger, our sense of justice, our sense of right and wrong overcome our hearts, our hearts of mercy. Okay, so it sounds to me like that message does have to be heard. It does. We do need to be told again, blessed are the merciful, they're going to be the ones who receive mercy. Sometimes it's hard because it doesn't seem reasonable to be merciful. It doesn't seem reasonable to be merciful. Because, being mercy means to not give to others what they deserve. So it seems more reasonable to be just all the time. Why? Well, because to be just is to be right. To be just is to be correct. Do you get that? If I say that was a just decision, I could have equally said that was the right decision. That was the correct decision. See, this is why mercy is way harder than justice. Because mercy is saying, I'm not going to give to someone what they properly deserve. So that's not something that a human mind can understand or a natural mind can understand. That's something that only a spiritual person can receive. To not give to others what they deserve when they are in the wrong is very, very difficult. And it can only be given by God. But St. Paul gives this admonition, consider Christ, who while you were enemies died for you. I mean, take this to its extreme. It would be like if when the Soviets came in to rescue the Germans or the Polish at Auschwitz, when they were about to kill those who were murdering millions of Poles and Jews, if one were to say, please don't do that to our persecutors, all die in their place. I mean, what Maximilian did was amazing. It was amazing to give his life so heroically for someone he loved, a brother Pole whose life was about to be taken. He wasn't able to raise his children. The other day, I did an interview with Father Joel Barstead and Father Michael O'Loughlin, and it was kind of fun. It was celibate versus married clergy. So Father Michael was obviously the celibate clergy. And at the end, I said, I kind of scared Father Michael. I said, Father Joel and I are going to team up on you. And we didn't, of course. But at the end, I asked Father Michael, say one good thing, one good positive that's unique about married clergy. And Father Joel, you say one thing that's unique about celibate clergy. And Father Joel's answer was so good. He said, celibate clergy can die well. They can die for others well. See, if your life is about to be lost, and you say, "Well, I have kids," I'd fight if I could physically fight. I'd do that, but I wouldn't. But I would not say, "I'll die in place because I have kids." See, I can't. That would be unresponsible for me. I have children, but a celibate priest could do that. See. So that's a unique thing about celibate priests. They can die well. I think it's important. So, mercy. Mercy is something that we have to choose. It's something that we have to offer if we want to be like our Lord, because while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So he didn't die for us when we said, "I'm ready to repent and live a life for you." He died for us while we were in a state of saying, "I hate you and I'm in rebellion against you." So that takes tremendous mercy, to die for somebody who is against you and say, "I hate you, I wish you were dead." Well, I'll die for you then. That makes no sense. Do you see? That makes no sense. So I had this interesting experience. I went to visit Faustinia's site, her relics. And if you know me, I'm a very skeptical person. I'm the most skeptical person. I'm like so skeptical, you should be surprised that I'm not an atheist. So I'm a very skeptical guy. So I went to venerate Faustinia's relics. In particular, I was going to pray for Deacon Kyle Washett's, one of his children, Macrina, for her well-being, and also for a nun whose name is Faustinia who asked me to pray. And so I was praying for them in particular. And when I venerated the relic, it smelt like somebody poured an entire vial of perfume on it, like an entire bottle of perfume on the relic. Now, because I'm such a critical guy, I presumed someone poured an entire bottle of perfume on this relic. Okay, so when we got back to I was careful because I was with a bunch of Roman Catholics who love Faustinia, and so I didn't want to scandalize them too much. But I did kind of want to make fun of that a little bit. And so I said, "Can you believe, like, that was a little over the top?" And the group I was with went, "What?" I go, "That smell. I mean, it was over the top." And they were like, "Father, there was no smell." And they go, "Yeah, there was. You're telling me you didn't smell that?" And they go, "No." So I asked the entire group, including the priest, what did you guys think about the smell? And they went, "Father, there was no smell." And I went, that's like impossible. That was the most fragrant relic I've ever smelt in my life. It was the most fragrant relic I've ever in my life. And I've smelt a little bit before, but I've never smelt anything that fragrant. So if you're going to talk to a Byzantine Catholic priest, that's a pretty good way of doing it. Because we know what that means, see? We know that implies sanctity, because we believe in theosis, right? That the human body begins to be transformed by the divine energies of God. And so when the saints, when they depart, oftentimes their body put off perfumes, fragrance, even holy oil that's oftentimes collected from the body of the deceased saints. So I thought that was quite something. I don't know all that it means, but I thought at least it's worth sharing with you, to share that with you, that was quite impressive for a Byzantine priest. So, I don't know. That's something. So anyways, I did bring back an icon to go because we have a relic of Saint Faustinia in the bookstore. So I did bring back an icon that can go with that relic, and I'll give it to you guys. It'll be my gift to you. I paid for it out of my own pocket, so it's a gift from me to you. So I'll put that in the bookstore for you, and you're welcome to venerate. We'll see if our relic starts taking on some sweet smells for you. Okay, so it was a great experience. I hope you all at some point can go on pilgrimage and experience something like that, something like what I did. And I hope you all deeply consider who it is that you need to be merciful to in your life. Who it is that you need to extend mercy to. Okay? Think about the people who have harmed you most. Think about the people who most do not deserve your kindness. And be like Jesus. Offer them some kindness. Okay? At least offer them your prayers. Okay? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.